Hello and welcome back into Slick Talk. This is your host, Blackstone Joe, recording this bright and early in the AM, and I am prepared to say I'm having a good morning. And anyone who knows me knows I'm not really a morning person. I'm definitely one of those, give me half a pot of coffee, let me get my emails out of the way. Hopefully they're all positive. Then I can say I'm having a good morning. But today, all it took was just rolling over, opening up my phone, and seeing a notification from another satisfied customer who recently bought themselves their very own Slick Talk t-shirt. Thank you so much for supporting the brand. This one came from our friend Mark, but we have some other names to shout out too. Tyler, Carrington, Lily, Jose, David, and Daniel. Those are just the recent ones I have. Thank you so much for ordering shirts, supporting the show, and better yet, posting these shirts on your social media and tagging us. We'd love to see that. And we have more apparel on the way too. It's exciting for more reasons than one. You know, we have the shirts that are currently on our social media, but we also have another design coming in, and we have our own trucker hat coming as well. So with all of this good news, I'm just going to spread the wealth a little bit. I want to do another giveaway. That's right, a Slick Talk giveaway, giving you the opportunity to snag your own shirt and snag a hat as well. So there's not going to be much to this one, folks. Really, it's going to be pretty simple. So this episode is live on September 28th. So that is going to be when you can start submitting entries for this giveaway. So how do you win? So between September 28th and October 2nd, share this show. Or if you already have your apparel and you haven't posted a photo yet, you can also post a picture of the apparel, tag us. But for those who don't have their apparel yet, just share a link to a Slick Talk podcast on either Facebook or Instagram. So you could pick the episode you like the most, or just pick the latest one, the one you're listening to. Either way, share a link to the show and tag 2 friends who you think might be interested. And you will be entered into the giveaway, and we will select a winner. So it's very important to tag us, so that way we can see your entry. You will be entered in. Then we will reach out on social media and get you your prize. So again, this is going to be a hat and a shirt. Deadline for entries is going to be Friday, October 2nd. You can enter starting on September 28th, the day this show comes out. So we're excited to get these shirts, these hats into your hands. Thank you so much to everyone who has ordered. If you want to order, you can still do so through Facebook and Instagram, just by direct messaging us, or you can email us, bstone@blackstone-labs.com. So I know I promised in our last episode that we would have the shirts up on our website within a week. We've just run into some slight delays, so believe they will make it there sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, yes, social media is always there. So thank you for ordering apparel. Thank you for especially continuing to leave reviews. I know that not every listening platform allows a chance to leave a review, but the ones we've seen, especially on Apple Podcasts, have been nothing short of glowing. A lot of 5 stars, a lot of amazing comments, just confirming that this show is tapping into the enthusiasms, the interests of not only the customers we already have, but people who are just learning about used oil analysis or had only, a little cursory knowledge, and now they're getting their fix as far as especially a look behind the curtain. And that's really, it's the mission statement of the show. We want to let you know what Blackstone does, but also what sets us apart from so many others in the industry. All right, so that's just a little customer appreciation that I always want to do whenever I can. So Keep leaving those reviews, keep tagging us. I love sharing any Slick Talk or Blackstone related posts that we can see on our feed that are positive. Keep sending those in. We love to feature you, especially on Instagram stories. It's really fun. Chances are good if you've had any interaction on our Instagram. It's probably been with me, and running that page has been just a really great thing to do, in addition to interacting with folks just via reports and this show. So it's a good time. So now let's switch gears to this. Today's topic is the analyst mindset. I want to give you a rundown of kind of what goes through the analyst's head when we're looking at a report, because I think so often there can be a little bit of a disconnect between the customer and the analyst as far as what we said and maybe what we wanted to say, what was left unsaid, and if we're being as brutally honest as we could be. So let's start with the first one I mentioned. So what did we want to say? And I'll tell you right away, every time we look at a sample, the first thing we would want to do is tell you the good news. That is going to be, anytime we can open up a comment and say, wow, you're taking great care of this engine, or wow, it looks like it's wearing very well. It's wearing better than average. How are metals trending? Oh, they're trending in a way that shows internal parts are working well together. We will want to give that good news first and foremost anytime we can. And that's held true from my first day starting at Blackstone all the way up to now. I remember being in training with one of my colleagues and just the rush of information. If I imagine it's basically what a lot of our customers go through the first time they look at a report. It's a lot to take in. You have all of these tests and elements and measurements, and you're looking at it in probably a new format you haven't really experienced before, and it can be a little overwhelming. So I remember just being in training with this colleague of mine, and we're just kind of absorbing, the first few days especially, is just, you can fill up a notebook just in the first couple days, sitting there and trying to really understand what this whole business is about. So we're sitting there and trying to wrap our heads around it. And I remember she looked at her notes, looked up, and she said, well, at the end of the day, we just want to tell people what they're doing well. And that really encapsulated the mission, as far as what is the one thing that we always would like to do. And it's definitely give the good news. We do not want to be coy. We do not want to make you work to understand the general idea. Whenever I look at a sample, if I have a compliment to give out first thing, if I have, if it looks like you fixed a problem, or it looks like you've, corrected some unusual trends, that is always going to be the first thing. And on the other hand, if we see a serious problem, that's going to be the first thing we talk about too. So I have a recent example to delve into, and this is an aircraft one. And I feel kind of bad for our aircraft fans, customers in general. I know this show hasn't gone too deep into aircraft yet, but best believe that we will. I try and remind myself, give myself a little bit of grace, that this is only year one of the show. We haven't even reached a year yet. So we have so much that we want to get into specifically, and aircraft is definitely an area that we will be tapping into as far as picking, particular engines, particular problems, so on and so forth. So it's coming. And this is just another opportunity to scratch the surface. So recently I was looking at a sample from a Lycoming 0360, and this one happened to be a pre-buy sample. And right away there were some concerning finds. We found a lot of metal, mainly aluminum, And aluminum, in this case, looked like it was primarily coming from piston pin plugs, based on how the rest of the sample looked. So we right away drew attention to the amount of metal, delved into sources of metal, the most likely sources, and then we tapped into a plan of action. So in this case, a borescope inspection was the next move to kind of learn more about aluminum, about which internal parts it's likely from, and from there, the customer has a lot of information for how to proceed. So in this case, like so many others, we're looking at the data that tells an obvious story, and unfortunately, it just wasn't a good one. But what we didn't try to do is work around it or undersell it, because it's a pre-buy. With pre-buy samples, we're going to be as brutally honest as possible, because that's really, our job isn't to pick a dog in the fight. We're not going to err on the side of the seller or the buyer. We're going to take an unbiased look at the data, because especially when you're talking about aircraft, of all of the engines out there, aircraft engines probably require the greatest degree of caution. And to that end, it leads me into another pre-buy I had recently, where it wasn't quite to the extent, the situation wasn't quite to the extent of this O360 I mentioned earlier that had so much aluminum that we suspected a problem with pistons or piston pin plugs. But this was an engine sample where metals weren't trending in a way that we expected. So the aforementioned engine we had no history on, but we did find enough metal to suggest a serious problem. This example is an engine that we did have history on. And quite frankly, trends just didn't look perfect. They didn't look cautionary either, though. There were some changes that we wanted to monitor. So this was an engine not terribly far removed from an overhaul. So if you are someone who's familiar with what the first oil change or the second oil change from an engine looks like, then you know that we tend to find high metals, high silicon from wear-in and sealer material washing out. So what happens from there? Well, typically we find steady progress. And now not every engine is going to end up wearing exactly like average, but you still see a typical pattern of improvement. And then even if the engine's not wearing exactly like averages, you'll see this sort of tapering off where metals find a level of consistency. We see stability in how these elements are trending from one sample to another. Well, that wasn't the case for this engine. Proceeding from the wear-in sample, we found some progress, not a lot, and then we found an increase, some notable increases, in fact. So we wanted to bring these increases to the customer's attention as areas to monitor moving forward. Now, it was not appropriate to run and call a problem just yet, because based on the amount of metal, it was mainly enough to show the engine was wearing more than average. However, so often, it's true that these results can be what amounts to a temporary setback for the engine. And we stated just as much in the comments. Now, obviously, this can throw a wrench in your plans, when it comes to selling or buying, but you can count on us always giving you an honest rundown of either what looks to be a serious problem or what looks to be an area that we would monitor at the next service, the next oil change, just to keep an eye on things. So that gives you the three main essentials, I would say, that we will pack into any comment. A comment for an engine or a transmission is almost always going to include either the good news, if that's all we have. It's going to focus on pointing out all of the positives. And if we have a report where a problem is the clear headline, then you can expect us to say as much. We will not just tuck a line in at the end and say, oh, this looks good, very end. And by the way, you have a piston problem. We are always going to bring to the forefront what either looks great or what looks like a problem. And then lastly, we will highlight what could be a potential issue, either in the form of increasing metals, possibility of contamination, so on and so forth. So now let's talk about what goes unsaid. I would say the most common question that comes my way, either over email or phone call, will be a lack of mention when it comes to changes in additive elements. So changes in additive elements, when does it matter? When does it not? Well, so often that's just due to people trying different brands or blends. And usually we're going to have bigger fish to fry, either talking about how the engine is wearing or talking about how the oil itself is holding up. Changes in additive elements are mainly a curiosity if you've been running the same brand or blend, literally the same bottle, because this can trip some people up. Mobil 1, let's just take this for example, Mobil 1 Euro or Mobil 1 EP or Mobil 1, the litany of kinds of Mobil 1 oil you can get. So a change in oil additives is mainly a point of interest if you've been running the exact same brand or blend, and then suddenly you have these changes in, let's just say you had a spike in magnesium or molybdenum or boron, pick whatever element you like. That's mainly interesting, mainly something to talk about if we don't have an expectation for it. Or, again, you've been running the same product. Then that might be more in line for a deep dive in the comment. But if you are one who switches brands or blends quite often, you see these up and downs and these additive elements, we'll probably not have a key interest in talking about it in the comment because, again, so often there are bigger fish to fry. And usually additive elements in general, having more anti-wear additive, having more detergent dispersant additive, you name it, it's not really going to coincide with big changes elsewhere usually. So it's going to take a backseat. Again, unless we see things that are just really unusual for the brand or blend, or if we're in a situation where it looks like you meant to send in engine oil, but it looks more like transmission oil, well, then we're going to be sure to talk about it and talk about what the oil looks like versus what it should look like. But so often, changes in additive elements are just going to take a back seat, but that is one area that we do field a lot of questions on. Rest assured, we wouldn't skip by a spike in a particular element and not mention it unless it did in fact warrant some sort of concern, some sort of mention. And you might find, as you sample repeatedly, we'll start to hone in on a particular test rather than mentioning every single test and result in every single comment. Because hopefully, you as the customer are gaining some understanding of this data as trends build, that you don't necessarily need the rundown of every test in the comment. Hopefully it's getting to the point where you can kind of look at these numbers a little bit and understand what's going on. So what we might leave unsaid are just particular tests. We might want to focus in on one. For example, if it's an engine where fuel tends to be a common concern, then maybe for me, I'll want to spend an entire comment just talking about fuel and how we find it. And I might give just a cursory mention to metals if they have looked as good as ever, there's no changes, then maybe I won't want to spend too much time on it. Maybe I won't talk about them at all, and then maybe I'll want to instead focus on other tests we haven't mentioned. So I would say if you have a comment where there's only one test really spoken of at length, then that can often be due to the fact that everything else just looks really clean. We aren't finding reason to kind of unpack every other test because the results are as good as ever. We might want to get more specific. And I think it's kind of fun. Yesterday I was reading a report from one of our analysts, Ben. If you've listened to Meet the Analyst, let's see, we had Meet the Analyst and Problem or Not a few episodes back, and we had Ben on the show. I was actually reading a report of his yesterday, and he spent the comment just really detailing viscosity testing, how we do it, what it looks like. And it was one of the most interesting reports I read the entire day, because it's always fun to really dig into that sort of methodology, because it's just not every day we have the opportunity to do so. And it's another way to reward the customer, I think, when they've been taking such good care of the engine and we don't have problems to talk about. We then get to dig into our process, give you an idea of what it looks like. And that's something that's just a bonus. If you read a comment and here we are just talking about a particular test and we're not, it might seem like we're being a little negligent towards the other results. Well, often just take a step back. That tells you right away that you're doing a lot of things right, because we have the luxury of just breaking down a test and not telling you have a problem in this area, you have a problem in that area, engine's wearing poorly, contamination, everything is going to hell, If you have one where we just talk about a test, that's a great sign. So we might leave a lot unsaid, but rarely, if ever, does that mean we're trying to hide the issue. So that really brings me to the conclusion here, which is blunt force. You can count on it being employed in a comment whenever appropriate. While we want to give the good news, while we want to be as positive as we can, if there is a problem, best believe that we do not shy away from it. If you read a comment and there is no mention of this looks bad or caution, problem, whatever word you want to use, we will not shy away from it, because we understand that as much as the good news is valuable, so too is the bad news, and steering you towards keeping an engine either in the sky or on the road. We understand that that's part of the job too, and it's a challenging part that we run into, where sometimes you do have to break the bad news and let folks know that either expensive repairs or a really careful maintenance system are in play. But as difficult as that can be, we will not shy away from it, and we will always give you the honest rundown. So I would say that's the note I would like to leave everyone with, which is that when we write a comment, you can count on us wanting to give you the full truth, nothing but the truth, because that's what you're paying us for. And we would never want to shy away from giving you the information you need to keep oil analysis a useful part of your maintenance plan. All right, that wraps up our talk on the Analyst Mindset. If this show just raised any questions, if you've had some reports sitting around that you might have wanted a little bit more insight on, or if maybe you now want to start sampling and you just have some more questions about how to get into used oil analysis, don't hesitate to reach out. You can either email us, bstone@blackstone-labs.com, or reach out on Facebook or Instagram. And remember, the t-shirt hat giveaway for our Slick Talk apparel, that contest will be starting up September 28th. And entries, we will stop taking them after Friday, October 2nd. So you have several days there to get your entries in. If you want to be entered, remember what you need to do is share an episode either on Facebook or Instagram, tag 2 friends that you think would be interested. And if you have some Slick Talk apparel already and you want more, because keep in mind, we're introducing more designs for the t-shirts and we have the hats on the way. If you already have one of our initial shirts, though, you can post a selfie. You can just post the apparel itself if you'd rather do that. You can share and tag us, and remember to tag friends in there as well, and you'll be entered. So we're looking forward to this giveaway. I'm looking forward to hearing more feedback on the show, too. Keep those reviews coming. And don't hesitate to reach out on social media as well, just if you have any episode ideas. We already have a few suggestions in the hopper that we're going to tackle soon. Keep them coming, though. And as always, thanks for listening. and never fail. Or man, we're going off the rails.